What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rhino Exploration. My name is Zach, and today we are going to be talking about how you should go about planning your adventure. The whole process, and what it's going to be is how I plan my adventure. So stay tuned, guys. Basically, like I said, let's talk about planning a route. How do you plan your adventure? Because your route is your adventure. That is what makes up the whole adventure, is your route. And it all has components to making the adventure, and I thought it would be a great idea to do it. Now, yes, we are in my office today doing this video. I had originally filmed it, and honestly, I got bored. If you ever had one of those days where you just kind of you sit there and you do something, and then you look at it a day or so later, and you're just kind of like, what was I doing? Yeah, that's one of the moments that I was having. So we are redoing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you guys about how I plan my routes, the processes that I go through, and then I'm going to actually jump on the computer and I'm actually going to show you guys what it is that I do. Because a lot of people, always wonder how other content creators and myself plan my routes. How do I choose where I want to go, do the things I do, and see what I see, and the whole process behind it. A lot of people are always, you always get those questions. Where did you go? Where is that? What's that trail called? And honestly, I understand why a lot of people don't really give out that information, because we want you to go out and plan your own adventure. But I'm going to help make that easier by showing you the process that I go through to planning my adventures. Because it's pretty simple, and I have a lot of fun doing it. It can be a long process, but it's a lot of fun. Now, as I'm talking through this, when I show you guys on the computer, everything will be through Gaia, which is not a sponsor of the channel, but that is what I use now to plan all my adventures. And some help from Google. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of this all and talk about how I go about planning it. So it all starts with, where do I want to go? Honestly, what region of the country that you are in do you want to go to? So for instance, I'm going to use Colorado because it is my home, it's where I live, and it is just going to be easier for me. And a lot of people here in the United States know Colorado. So for me, if I'm doing an adventure here in Colorado, where do I want to go? Do I want to go south? Do I want to go west? Do I want to go up north? There's not a whole lot to the east, but you could. But where do you want to go? So, for instance, take my 4-day adventure that I went with with my dad. And how did I plan it? Well, I knew I wanted to go to Western Colorado. Simple enough. Western Colorado. I knew I wanted to be in the Montrose, Telluride area. Narrows it down. There's the region that I want to look at. Pretty straightforward, yeah? There's a ton of different trails in that region. I mean a ton. And to try and name a few of them, things such as Engineer Pass, Cinnamon Pass, Black Bear Pass, Imogene, those kind of trails, they're all up in that area. And that is why it is like a mecca in the summertime for off-road and adventure enthusiasts here in Colorado, because they're great trails that have beautiful views on it. That brings us to the next one. What trails do you want to do? Now, that is all based off of what you are looking for. Are you looking for an easy trail, a moderate, a hard trail? With those, are you looking to stay on dirt as long as possible? Are you looking for, depending on how many days you have, are you looking to base camp somewhere and you want to go do a trail and be able to head back there? Are you trying to do, like my trip was, an overlanding trip where you start in one spot and every night you're finding somewhere new to camp along your route? It all just depends on you. For instance, I prefer moderate trails. That is what I love doing. They are fun, they're technical, they make my brain work, but I'm not going to destroy my Jeep so I can't drive it home, and it's not going to be so easy that I feel like I'm just on a county road seeing, private property. Now, not all adventures can just be moderate trails if you're trying to stay on dirt as long as possible. It isn't. It's like trying to drive on the interstate and hoping to not go into a big city. It's going to happen at some point. So, how do you want to do it? For me, to take the 4-day trip for the example of this whole video, I decided that I was going to start at this end and I wanted to finish over here. So I started near Gunnison, the town of Gunnison, and I wanted to finish near Telluride, which we all know that didn't quite happen, but that's because the trails were all we had some incidents on the trails. But that was the original plan. So what is around there? If I want to hit dirt as long as possible and for as much as possible, what is around that area? So I started looking, and on that trip I was looking to hit some of the bigger name trails that had the views, because it was, this was the beginning of July. It was, a lot of the passes started opening up from the winter finally, and so I wanted to tackle those. So I started looking at the map, and I get that this probably just sounds like a bunch of chatter. It will all make sense when I show you guys on the map. I find that for some people, explanation works great. Others, explanation and an actual visual is what they need. So don't worry, I'm going to get to the visual. It'll all make sense. But I started looking in the area and I found a trail. And for me, with filming an adventure and the trail, I typically try to judge it based on that. I know that if on any trail it says it takes roughly about 2.5 hours, it's going to take me about 5 hours. Because I know with my filming, I add about 2.5 hours to any trail that I'm doing. So, when I'm looking for trails, especially on like the 4-day adventure like that, I want to stay on dirt as long as possible. I try and find trails that are round about 30 miles or more. That's what I look for. And that's what I started doing. I started plotting out trails that I could look for. And with me, when I plan my adventure, though I may have to hit pavement sometimes, I try to make it so that the adventure is constantly going forward towards the destination that I want to end at. Because there's no sense in just bouncing all around. I try and make it just one even flow, so I'm constantly going in the direction where I want my journey to end. And for my 4-day adventure, that's where it started, on Old Monarch Pass. It was a long enough trail that was supposed to be, on the easier side of things. Because like I said, you can't do as much, stay on dirt as long as possible without hitting easier trails. But it was supposed to be easy and with a few little obstacles here and there, which it did have. And it was great. And it was a very beautiful drive. It was technical in certain little areas, and it was a blast. And then we headed down. Now, to keep that going, I had to keep finding trails in that area, which honestly, it wasn't hard. It was just finding trails that, in a sense, connected and were long enough. A lot of trails over there don't necessarily connect to other trails. They're just, you have one trail system, you come back to the start. There's several trail systems, but they're out and back trails. I was looking for a point A to point B kind of trail. It just takes a little digging, and you have to look for what you're wanting. Now on this adventure, I knew that everything couldn't be a moderate or technical trail. It just would not do for me or my dad, because on a technical trail like that, after a while, your body starts hurting. Also, it's hard to find it where it's just back-to-back technical trails. That's where Owl Trail kind of came into play, where we entered onto it, and honestly, that trail was the easiest trail out of everything we did. It just was, but it was beautiful, and it was a great way of ending our first adventure and then starting our next one, because it's just gorgeous views in the morning. And then we kept going and we kept bouncing around till we got our whole trail system made. And I designed all these trails on my mapping system, on my GPS system. I was able to build the route, which gave me the information about the length of the trail, the elevation changes, what might be along the trail itself. It was great. When you're planning a trail or a route, you need to consider how long are you going to be out. I was out for 4 days. I had to plan fuel stops and refill stops, refuel on supplies, water, things like that. And you have to be able to plan those into your adventure, because unless you have a massive fuel system on your vehicle, after about 2 days, you're gonna need more fuel. It's just how it is. So you have to plan those into place. And then also, where do you want to camp? Camp's an important part of this. And a lot of people always want that epic campsite, but how do you find it? Well, you gotta look. And the way I look for campsites will come clear here when I show you guys on the computer. But it is important to find and have several campsites marked out for your adventure. For instance, when I go on a 1 day or a 2 day adventure where I'm camping one night, for every night I camp, I have typically 3 potential campsites marked out. That's just my rule of thumb. That's what I do. Because if one site either turns out not to work or someone's already at it, I have at least 2 more sites to go and look at that are potential campsites. Now, that's not to say you won't find other campsites along your way that could be better than the ones you chose, but it's a good rule of thumb to have several sites marked out so that if one doesn't work out or someone's there, you can find another one, and make sure that they're along your route. Don't make them to where they're, you have your whole route and then they're somewhere completely different. Because at the end of the day, if your route took you longer to do than you were planning, you're not having to push for several more hours to get to the camp you wanted. You have some marked out along the way. So you have multiple campsites, but 2, you have potential backups for if you can't make it to where you want to go. The other thing you have to take in is the weather in that area, guys. It is very important. Here in Colorado, the Rocky Mountains and Mother Nature have a lovely tendency to change their minds on the blink of an eye. It can be super sunny, not a cloud in the sky, and all of a sudden the darkest clouds in the world are there and it's raining on you and you're going, where was this? So knowing the weather in your area beforehand is highly important, just because sometimes that changes what you're doing. You should have some campsites that could be potentially in areas that are going to help kind of protect you from the weather. So it is highly important to check the weather and make sure that it's good. Also, guys, it's going back to the trail. Make sure you can handle the trails. Make sure you can handle the trails. Know where your vehicle's limit is and know where your limit is, because there does no one any good if you're trying to push your vehicle past what it can do or push yourself way past where you can go. It's all about experience, and if you don't have that experience, work on something smaller and slowly build yourself up. As you guys know from my 4-day adventure, we had that Tacoma on Engineer Pass, teetering on the side, and the dude had 0 experience and he was trying to tackle a trail that he just could not handle. His rig could, but he couldn't. It's just knowing what you can do and plan it accordingly. Like I said, I prefer on my adventures to stay on dirt as long as possible. Now, I know some of my adventures, we were going, if you take my California adventure, we went from point A to point B to point C, D, E, F, and we were on roads a lot, and sometimes that's great. Otherwise, on other adventures, I try and keep it as simple as possible. So, now that I've kind of did a very quick overview of how I do it, let me show you guys how I go on how I do all my research, how I find where I want to go, the whole process in a nutshell. Let me show you guys, because I think it'll be super helpful for you guys. And if you are using something like Onyx or Gaia, which are, like I said, not sponsors of the channel, or some of the other new GPS systems that are out there, they have route building features, which makes this even simpler. And it makes it awesome because you can just follow your route and you have it all marked out the whole way. You don't have to sit there and go, oh, was I on this trail, or am I still on the right trail? You have it all marked out, which is a huge game changer in the way you off-road. So without further ado, let's hit the computer. Alright guys, here we go. So this is Gaia. As you guys can see, here is the map, and you will see I've got a ton of different pinpoints and routes all over the place, and this is from the latest update from Gaia. Is they changed it to where all your pinpoints don't just look like this little waypoint marker right here. You can actually label them and make them into different things and change the colors, which is awesome because it allowed me to clean up all my things and make it make more sense for me. Because at first, when I transferred all my stuff from Onyx over to Gaia, it transferred nicely, but I just had a bunch of different waypoints that I had to actually like click on to get the information. Nevertheless, okay, so let's get into making the route. How you plan it. Like I said, I'm going to use lovely Colorado here as my example, and here we go. So I start here in Colorado. I live in Denver over here, and I wanted to go ahead and say I want to go to the west again, like I said. So I'm going to come over here to western Colorado. Yes, this is Moab right here. To give you a reference, Moab, western Colorado, bunch of the Rockies. And I knew I wanted to be near the Montrose area and Telluride. And yes, this is Telluride right down in here. Now I'm going to show you guys, we're going to just choose something completely from scratch, and we're going to build a route. So I'm going to continue to stay in this western Colorado region because this is where a lot of people know. Honestly, a lot of people, when they come to Colorado, they don't necessarily hit the trails closer to Denver. They hit everything in the west, which I can't blame them. The weather's gorgeous. So to start, let's go ahead and zoom our way down into here, just like so. And we are going to play over in this area for Montrose, okay? So let's say this is the area that I want to start in, over by Montrose, and I can start looking at what the trails are here. And if I want, I can zoom in, I can click on it, and then I can look through these over here, these map layers off to the side. You'll see it's kind of labeled there. It just is the information regarding the trails. I can click it. It tells me, degree of difficulty, the level of maintenance, so on and so forth. If it's open or closed. And it's open right now. So let's just say this is where I want to go. Let's say I'm doing a 2-day adventure just to make this short, sweet, simple, to the point. Okay? So I'm going to start by coming over here, and I'm going to click route. And it's going to say, give me the little shortcuts, And I'm just going to make this 2-day test. And you can choose the color of the route. I'll get into that all in a second. So let's say I want to start near the city of Montrose, and this is my starting point. A little waypoint's going to appear there. You will be able to label things here. I will show you soon, but for now, we're going to build the route. And let's say I want to take what is their Highway 90 all the way up into the trails. So if I hover here, 90% of the time, it's going to draw this blue line that you're seeing on the screen along the trail. Every once in a while, it doesn't. It may make it seem like it's going to go somewhere else. And if you actually zoom in, it's because the trail isn't connected in the area that you're thinking. So if we zoom in, we can click this, and it adds one waypoint. And as you can see right over here, we have gotten information. So far, it's 12 miles, the ascent, all this information here, your elevation. I don't know why that's like that. There we go. And so now we can continue to keep going and planning our route. So to make it simple for you guys, I'm just going to keep it on the darker lines here, which are more of county roads. But it makes it easier for you guys to see. So I can keep going, and I can plot as many waypoints as I want, building my trip. And let's say I want to take that all the way down to here. Okay, so let's take it up to here. I'll come up this road here. Like I said, guys, this is just me planning out a route to show you all. And let's say I want to take it all the way to here. And this is where I want it to end. It's going to be a total of 52 miles. I can make this red so you guys can see the true outline of it all. So here is our route right here. It's in the red. And you can see the distance. Doesn't go away. The distance, your altitudes that you'll be at, elevation-wise, feet. And here you can add notes. You get a nice little map that shows you. So we have our route built. So then we can go ahead and save. Boom. Now it is saved into my maps, and I can actually find this on my phone in the app, and I can also download it into my phone. So when I'm off, my maps are offline, I can have it there and not have to worry about it. Now, like I said, this is a 2-day adventure. For example, I'm not too concerned about fuel because one, I can fill up in Montrose before I begin, go all the way through, and then I can either fill back up in Delta or back in Montrose before heading home or going to my next trail that I want to do, which is awesome. So there's my fuel stop. That's what I was thinking. If I was to zoom out and show you guys the route that I actually took on my 4-day adventure, you'll see I started in Gunnison. I had a fuel stop in Gunnison. Over to here, I could have stopped in Montrose, went through. Right down here is Ridgeway, stop to get gas. Can go through Ouray. There's a fuel stop. You have fuel stops down here in Lake City. Back over here, Silverton, fuel stop. Go down all the way to Telluride, fuel stops. Resupplies are in those cities. Most of the time, any place that has fuel, you can resupply on food, water, things like that. Most of the time. Not every place has that stuff. A lot of the little podunk towns don't. Just being honest. So, we know this is where we want to start. This is where our trail begins. One thing I like doing is I like taking a waypoint, putting it there, and I always label it. That's my starting point. Start. And I make it a certain color. I have certain colors that are for starting points, end points, all sorts of different things, just so it helps me when I see it. I know what it is, and I can go ahead and save it. There's my start point. And then I can come all the way over here to my end point. I can come all the way over here to my end point, do the same thing, grab it, move it to my end point. That. And boom. So when I zoom out and I click off of this, I see there's my start point, my end point. I can add points for where I'm going to be turning, things like that. But for the most part, I don't necessarily add those just because I built the route. I can follow it. Now let's start looking for camp. Now the way I find camp is a little different than some other people. Like I said, everybody does theirs differently. So I go to layers and I'll turn on the satellite mode. And one thing to mention with Gaia, you have to get all these layers kind of positioned correctly on top of each other. Otherwise, things don't always show. So if you put this over top of the satellite, you're not going to get the satellite image. You're just going to see the topo. Versus if this is on top, you get everything else. It's just a game of stacking the layers and finding which way works for you, and you can adjust the intensity. Little sidetrack. Okay, so I can start looking on the trail. So I turn on satellite and I go ahead. First off, I go ahead and I make sure that anywhere I want to camp is in public land. This is all BLM land in yellow. This is a combination of private property, state trust land. It'll tell you. And the green is national forest. Onyx is the same way. The dark tan yellow is is BLM. The green is national forest. Blue is normally state trust, and some of the dark gray areas are private property. You don't want to camp in private property, guys. You'll just get in trouble, and you don't want to be trespassing on someone's land. So just pay attention. Almost all private property is marked private property. Don't trespass. You have access to the road, yada, yada, and so forth. All right, back to finding camp. Whoop. Let's zoom in. So in my satellite mode, what I start doing is I start following my track. I can zoom in as far as I can to where it'll basically look good, and I start following my track. Now, yes, these are some winter pictures, so things look like there's snow on it. But I follow my track, and what I start looking for is areas that could possibly be a potential camp. Like, for instance, this road here going down, I'm following it. It's an actual path, and it ends in a clearing. Now, this could be really good. There could be some areas tucked up in these trees, or it could just be a nice big area but provide you no protection. So what I tend to do is I take a waypoint, I'll stick it there if I like the spot, I make my little camp thing, turn it green, and I will put camp. And I always put a question mark because until I see it, I don't know if it's camp or not. But that's just what I do. And there we go. I have a camp spot marked. And so I'll keep going. I'll keep trucking along here. And I make them, like I said, at various distances apart. So if this doesn't work, I don't have all my camp spots marked in this little area. I have them all over the place. Because you never know where you're going to find an awesome camp spot. You got here. This leads here. This is an actual hiking trail for the most part. This could potentially be a nice little camp spot right up in there. And I just keep kind of going until I can see where a potentially great campsite might be. And sometimes you find them along the way. So I just keep kind of looking up, going along. For instance, like right up in here, if you have a big enough convoy, you can put some people right in there. That could work. Zoom out here. Let's get way further down our trail here. Here we go. So just like up in here, this to me are trees, and right here is just big open space. I don't think I'd want to camp there because it is massively, it's just exposed. You have no clearing. But right in here, you could have some potential nice areas that protect you from the wind, get you off the trail, and you're tucked up away from the main trail. I like looking for trails that kind of end in a dead end. It just makes life easier. Like coming over here, you'll see this trail. It ends right here. There could be a potentially nice campsite right here. Just make that camp. Make it green and give it a little tent. And so I got, 2 spots marked out. I said this was a 2-day adventure. Let's try and find one more campsite up along here. And we may have some gold right up in here. Perfect. Look at this. You can see, this is a great example. You can see the trail. This is an actual road. It ends here, which could be a really good camp spot. But you also see there's lots of little side paths that people have made up and along here. And yes, some of them look like there are some buildings. This is still in the forest, national forest. So those could actually just be trailers, except for maybe that. But you can get in here and you could go, well, there's a little path leading here. This could be a nice little camp spot right up in here. So you can just drop your waypoint. Boop. Camp, question mark, green, triangle. And just like that, guys, you have now got 3 potential camp spots marked up along your route at various points that you can go to and check out. And if you don't like the first one, you can always go to the next one. Or if you find something spectacular along the way, you can go there and you can go, this is perfect. And you can just drop a waypoint there. So next time you're out there, you know where you stayed. But this is how you can build your route, guys. And you got your, like I said, camp right there, endpoint. You have all the information. And when you click on it, it's going to pull up your route for you and keep you in check with everything. All right, guys, that's pretty straightforward, right? Super simple to build your route and create an awesome adventure. And don't get me wrong, sometimes you get there and things just don't go your way. Or you run into people that need your help, or you may need help. It is all part of the adventure, and it's all about your attitude. If you're having a great time no matter what, it makes the adventure no matter what. If you just get into a bad mood, it doesn't help. But I hope you guys found this very helpful in how you should go about planning your routes and making your adventure as good as you can make it. Like I said, some things to keep in mind, depending on your adventure. If it's for every night you plan to camp, have at least 3 campsites marked out. That is just a really good rule of thumb, guys. Make sure you got your fuel stops and resupply stops all planned within your route. And remember to have a good time, guys. It's all about having fun. So thank you guys for joining me. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done it already. I have a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, guys, and you all are what is going to make that happen. You guys help make the channel grow. Also, all the links to my other social media platforms are in the description below, so go ahead and check them out, guys. The journey doesn't end when that camera stops rolling. I constantly am posting and keeping you guys up to date on what I have going on and some of the stuff that I just don't put on YouTube. It goes on to my other accounts, so it's awesome. But thank you all for joining me, and I will catch you all next time out on the trail.